Let's face it, as Nintendo fans, we are often left slightly disappointed and scratching our heads asking why. Where is our Super Mario Galaxy 3? Why isn't Metroid out yet? Bring back the Ice Climber, seriously, and what were you thinking of the Virtual Boy? Well, sit back as Sean Capri and Bobby Pauls do just that. That's right, this is If We Ran Nintendo. Now, cue the music, maestro.
What is up, everybody, and welcome to episode 19 of If We Ran Nintendo. I am Bobby, the Nintendo Guru, joined by my good buddy from Canada, Sean. What is up, Sean?
Everything is great. Everything is awesome. I'm so excited. This is going to be our best episode 19 yet.
Yes. Now, I'm done talking to you because I got a bigger...
Okay, I'll see you later. Maybe see you later, y'all.
We are joined by the awesome Jools. Is it Watsham?
Yeah, perfect, man.
Okay,
Good job.
I just want to make sure I said it right. I don't want to mess up.
Yeah, nice one.
From Renegade Kid.
Hello.
How are you doing today, sir?
I am very good, thank you.
For those that don't know Jools does a lot of cool games. There's a couple, I'm going to run through them real quick. Mutant Mudds, which I am a huge fan of. Love Mutant Mudds. The other one is, what is it, Xeno Drifter? Xeno Drifter.
There's a little Max right there.
Oh, I love that dude.
Oh, that is awesome.
I love that dude. And it gives me the whole Earthbound feel. I think that's why I fell in love with it. You know, because it reminds me of
a kid going on an adventure.
Yeah, exactly. Just going, and it's kind of like Aliens, so it's kind of the same feel and all that stuff.
True, yeah, exactly. Like this normal suburban neighborhood has been overrun by some weird alien attack, and you're like, all right, let's go and fix this then.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally.
Exactly.
Who doesn't love that adventure?
It reminded me of Commander Keen in kind of a weird way.
Uh-huh.
But I don't know if it's not really like kind of a difficult platformer. I don't know if that's it.
I've heard a lot of people say that. I think I don't know. I think because it's just very. It's it has that kind of Mario vibe, but it's different. The level designs are a little bit more slower paced and intricate, whereas Mario is a little bit more. Let's just go and kind of time it perfectly.
Yeah, you can swing through it totally.
Yeah, whereas this, you have to stop and look at it and figure it out. So yeah, I've heard that a lot. Yeah, and actually, funny enough, I used to work with Tom Hall for a little bit, who made that game.
Oh, fascinating!
Good guy. Yeah.
The sequel that just came out to that one, I hate that game because I can't. It just shows me how bad I suck at video games. And it's like you die like a million times. It actually keeps track of how many times you die.
That's how you know it's a good game.
No. That's how you know that you stink. That's how it is. Because it
is shocking how many people find that game so challenging. It surprises me. I mean, I know it's hard. I'm not like I don't think it's easy by any stretch of the imagination, but
I'll be honest with you.
We're spoiled now.
So I played that one, right? And because you sent me that one, I played it, and I played it for a long time, and I was really going at it, and I was dying a million times. I went back to the one before it, and I'm a champ at it now.
Cakewalk.
Yeah, it's like night and day. It's totally. But that one used to be kind of challenging too.
Yeah. A
lot of it's challenging because you're still learning what everything is and how to do everything.
Yeah.
Especially it's not like old school where you had the instruction manuals and you sat there and go through them and you go, okay, this is used for this and this is used for that. You got to kind of figure stuff out a little on your own. But man, once I started to figure out, okay, this weapon does this and this one does this, I was like, okay, I'm off and running. But I'm telling you, when you go back, it's like, that game's sissified now. And it's crazy.
Super Challenge does not mess around, man. It is it definitely assumes you know exactly what you're doing. Because a lot of people played the first mods and didn't realize you could cancel the hover mid-hover. And I'm like, whoa, and in Super Challenge, that is instrumental. You have to be able to cancel your hover to land where you want to land or whatever.
Yes.
So it just blew my mind that some people were playing the game, jumping, pressing hover, and waiting until it automatically ran out before they were allowed to land. I'm like,
I was
wow,
doing
that's
that in the
fascinating.
beginning. Yeah, I was doing that in the
that
beginning.
Makes sense.
Yeah. I did it in the beginning, and then by mistake one time. I think I was trying to go someplace, and I clicked it by mistake, and I fell. And I was like, you gotta be kidding. I was like, oh, wait a minute, that's good, because now I can
you have more control,
Yeah, I got more control over it. So yeah, that's I love that game. That game is phenomenal.
Thanks, man.
One I just started messing with today because I didn't even know you made it. Totes the Goat.
Yes.
Sean,
even the name.
You got to get this game, Sean.
I don't have it near me, but I actually got like a little 3D print of Totes, which is amazing, by FabZat, and that's what they do.
Yeah,
and they sent it to me as a spec piece. Oh my gosh, it's awesome!
That's
it looks
awesome.
like him. It's like
It's
a
awesome.
little guy.
It's,
Anyway,
It's like Crossy Roads. Like he announced, like he says, it's like Crossy Roads meets Cuber.
Totally.
So
that's perfect.
it's a mobile game. It's so cool. I actually downloaded today and started playing. I was like, this is awesome.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's fun. It was really fun to make that game, and thankfully, I think it was App Advice, like a website who reviews web games. They said Crossroad meets Cuba, and I'm like, perfect. Now I can say.
Oh yeah,
that's exactly what it was, but I can't say that. So someone else said it. I'm like, great. So now that's the tagline.
No, good stuff. All right, so you've been doing video games, making video games, working in the industry for almost 20 years now, give or take. To me, I always like to ask this question because I'm always curious. Like, what got you in? What made you decide, like, this is what I want to do?
Well, I grew up in the UK. That's where I was born. That's where I'm from. I moved over to the States in '93. So when I was growing up in England, it was a little different then because we had, like, my first computer was called a Spectrum 48K, and it was a computer, very, very low powered. It had 48K of memory. It was really, really low powered, but it was, cutting edge at the time. And that was the first computer. My dad got one. I thought that was really cool. So then I got my own one, which was a slight upgrade from that, called the Spectrum Plus, with a hard keyboard case and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, short version of that is there were a lot of computers in Europe versus in the States and maybe other parts of the world. There was things like the NES and more like consoles where you could play games, which was great. But what was nice in the UK is you actually had computers, so you could get in there and mess with the guts and maybe even try a little bit of programming and stuff like that. I'm not a programmer, but I attempted it way back when, and that turned me off immediately. I got into more the creative side pretty quickly because I was like, wow, no, not for me. But so I kind of started with that. Like then we had there's a really cool program called Shoot 'em Up Construction Kit, and you could make your own kind of like really bad, but you could make your own games using that package. So you could draw your own sprites, your own artwork, make your own sound effects. You could make enemies and kind of create the enemy patterns, and it was awesome. It was amazing. You could actually make your own games. So that's kind of what I really got into. So that's kind of where it began. But then at that time, I didn't really comprehend that you could actually get a job in that industry. It still felt like these games came from magic factories somewhere. How on earth would you get in the industry? No idea. So I didn't really even entertain that as a reality. I just liked messing around with it. So as a kid, I definitely had that dream, but like I said, didn't think it would happen. But then, so my first entry into the industry was actually through the journalist side. I was going to graphic design college in London. I was about 17 at the time, and on my lunch break, I was walking around Farringdon in London, that's where the college was, and then came across EMAP Images, the building, and that was a really big publishing company in the UK. And this is obviously pre-internet. So this was all print magazines. So they did The One and Me Machines and CVG and Ace and all kinds of amazing magazines. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's right there. So it's a really fun kind of turning point for me where I'm like, do I walk in and ask for a job, or do I just go, wow, that's really cool, that's where the magazine... I had the magazine on me, I had The One on me. I'm like, oh, this is where this magazine's made, that's so cool, and keep walking. So a short version of that is I did walk in, ask for a job, and I got one because I was cheap and enthusiastic and had the balls to go in and ask for a job, I guess. And that kind of then led on my career to be like, wow, I can maybe get paid to be involved with games. This is pretty cool. Whereas before that, I really didn't allow myself to think that could become a reality, because then it wasn't a known career. This was a long time ago. This was like 91, 92. And it just wasn't something that you commonly heard about. So anyway, so that was the medium length version of how I got into the industry.
This blows me away, because when I met Brian and we had the same conversation privately, and I asked the same question. He went into the story kind of similar, in some degree. Klaus, same thing. What blows me away is all of you guys are from Europe,
Yeah.
And you all made your ways at some point to the United States. Like, how do you do that? Like, I don't know how that. What blows me away, and I admire completely, is to think that at a very young age, you guys are like, okay, Mom, Dad, see you later. I'm going to the States.
And not Canada, by the way.
Yeah.
Right. I've heard Canada's beautiful.
Stop.
I need to visit someday. Oh, I need to visit someday. Yeah, I think, you know what, I think it's a common trait of people who are driven and love to do, they find a passion and they want to chase it, no matter what. I love my parents. I really enjoyed my life with them, but I could not wait to get out and be independent. No slant on them. They're awesome. But I wanted to get out and be in control of my own life. And I just found that sense of adventure really exciting. And I really couldn't wait to see what on earth, what kind of trouble I could get into, you know. Yeah, and I think if you have that spirit, then that I think naturally in turn can then either lead you down a path where you're doing something that you really enjoy, or maybe even being an entrepreneur, you know, where you're doing something where you're starting a business. I mean, who knows? So that's kind of what I've learned over the years as well. It's like that gift, I guess, or whatever, that just trait that I had, that drive, has helped kind of propel me in a business sense and a creative sense, which is I'm very thankful for.
That's the parallel that I always see with developers, entrepreneurs, as you mentioned, people, self-starting people. They can always identify a moment in their life when they look back and they say, I had two ways that I could approach this situation. Either I walk away or I walk in and ask for a job, and it completely changes the trajectory of my life. Yeah,
it defines you as a person as well, because if that decision turns in, well, it depends on who you are. If that decision turns into a negative, that can either, you know, deter you from doing that, or encourage you to do it even more. Depending on your personality. But for me, like, I think because that paid off, I've done that every step. I mean, Dementium is a prime example of that. We're like, hey, let's do a bloody FPS for the DS. Yeah, why not? That makes sense. At the time, you know, that was crazy. But we're like, Greg and I were like, we don't care. Let's give it a shot. Let's make it a cool game. Get it out. And if it burns and fails, oh well, we're going to get another job. If it does well, it could do really well, because we thought the people like us out there who wanted that on the DS, just like we wanted it on the DS, and it worked out. You know, I think it has, but it all comes back to that those decisions on doing something that maybe is very risky, and you're like, nah, what's the worst that can happen?
Somehow, yeah, you just have some sort of internal inertia that kind of pushes you through. But we can talk about that on, maybe we'll have you on my show. We'll dive into that one. But I want to talk about, you mentioned the DS a little bit. Like, I get the sense that you're a Nintendo fan. Renegade Kid usually puts the games out on Nintendo. In your mind, what is the difference between working with Nintendo and other companies, or is there a difference at all?
Yeah, I mean, I am naturally a Nintendo fan, so that goes a long way. I mean, I grew up with the Amiga and the Commodore 64 and stuff like that, so that was a very different. So my formative years were really more not Nintendo actually, but as soon as I really got my hands on Super Mario World on the SNES, a little bit late to the game really with a Nintendo life, I was like, wow, this is incredible. Anyway, but no, working with Nintendo, it's like I say, part of it is the fact that I'm a fan, so that certainly makes my perception bias in that regard. But they are, all of the teams, like at Sony and Nintendo as a direct comparison, are really friendly and enthusiastic and good at their job. You know, everyone who works in these places are actually really good at what they do. They're not just a bunch of suits that are paid to do a certain job. You know, they're enthusiasts. They like to play games. They like to be involved in making games, just like any of us, really. They honestly are. They just happen to work there. So that's definitely a common thing. I think certainly since Sony with the PS2 era and the PS1 era, from my perspective, were very arrogant because the PS1 and PS2 were so popular and were so, you know, record-breaking in many, many ways. I think whether it was, I don't know, maybe I wasn't directly dealing with them one-on-one because we're dealing with them through like Iguana and Acclaim and places like that. But my perception of them at that time, they're very hard to work with. That may have just been the people that I was getting the information from internally, I don't know. But I kind of got the impression they were kind of hard to work with. And then the PS3 obviously was not a great success for them. And I think on the PS4, now they're awesome again, and they're all really humble and kind of just, maybe there's a whole new team, maybe there's a new attitude. I'm not sure what the difference is, but the PS4 people that I've worked with have been incredible. Same with the Vita and stuff like that as well. But Nintendo have been awesome the whole time, as far as I can tell. And I think a lot of it is they're so unique. And the weird thing is the way it kind of expands out into the press and the community is when it, and again, I might be biased because I'm a Nintendo fan, but I don't think it's only that. But when it comes to, hey, yeah, we have a new game coming out on a Nintendo console, great. It's very easy for me to identify what the Nintendo audience is, where the community is, what do they want, what don't they want, stuff like that. Whereas Sony and Microsoft and really any other audience, it's hard to find where they are. There isn't just a handful of primo websites on here's the fan sites and whatever. It's like they're kind of scattered and almost more involved in the multi-platform sites rather than here's the Sony site. I mean, there is the Sony site, there is the Microsoft site, of course, but there's, I don't know, the Nintendo ones seem to be easier to identify. I don't know why that is, but I think the audience is just very different. There's that community, that loyalty to Nintendo, which I think there is that to Sony, but those loyalists are more like the Madden, kind of, fans, whereas Nintendo is more like the Mario, etc. fans. So they're very different types of people. So the types of places they go to and their level of geek and what they want to do with their geekdom is very different. Where they're talking sports over there, couldn't care less about that. Some over here are the Nintendo people, and we're talking games, we're talking the actual same language. So that's just a very long way. It's complicated, basically. Yeah. But I think, hopefully, you can glean something from that mixture of words.
So with that, with you guys doing a lot of stuff with Nintendo and all that, you guys are one of the few companies who even delved into a cross-buy situation on a Nintendo console. So my question is was that a difficult decision to make? And did you ever get to the point where you guys are sitting there talking and feel like you're maybe leaving money on the table by doing that?
I mean, to be honest, I'm not from a business perspective, I'm not a huge supporter of cross-buy.
Okay.
Because some people are happy to double dip, and if it's cross-buy, it's lost money. It's simple math. Yeah. Simple money lost on the table. But the reality is the market is what it is, and you have to respond to the market, and you have to be supportive of what the customers want and what the market's saying, or you'll go out of style and you'll be lost in no time. The tricky thing is, you look at Nintendo, you look at Sony, you look at Apple, they're all completely different from each other.
Yeah.
But you're trying to sell the same game on all of those platforms, and you're like, and you do something different over here, and something these guys are complaining. I'm like, well, you could buy it over there if you want, but you're over there, so it's really complicated, especially when we did MUDs, obviously on 3DS originally, then we brought it to iOS, and at the time, iOS, you release it for 99 cents or you're dead. So when you do that, the people who paid $9 over here are like, hey, what are you doing? You're like, yeah, but you know that you have a better experience in 3DS than iOS, right? You have buttons and stuff, and they don't, and, whatever. But now, 99 cents, that market's not even here anymore. Now it's completely different. Now premium is more accepted. You're premium or you're free. Yes. 99 doesn't even exist anymore. Yeah. So and that's just a few years later, Anyways, that's a roundabout way of saying, Sony were already doing cross-buy. It was already just established. That's just the way it was. PS3 Vita, PS4 Vita, it's all cross-buy, and that's almost just a given. It's weird if you're not cross-buy on their platforms unless you're like really top dog.
What is it about their platforms that allow them to do that? I don't know how much you can speak to that, but I've always been curious about why it is just it's almost a given, as you say, on Sony, but then it's a monumental effort to go to both platforms in a Nintendo ecosystem.
Well, I think Sony did do it first, and I think they probably encouraged it, and they probably supported it with their own first-party or self-funded games.
Okay, so they set the landscape for everybody to sort of follow.
Yeah, they set the tone for that.
Sure.
Nintendo,
listen, Sean knows all about Nintendo not doing cross-buy. He's so aggravated that he has to buy Mario 50 times on the 3DS, the 2DS, everything. Which, I get it, I understand, and it boggles my mind a little bit. On the new games, I get it. you want to try to, you got to earn that money back, and I get it. I understand it. A Mario game, Super Mario World, Legend of Zelda, like, you've made your money hand over fist on that. That's kind of where I lean on the side of, like, maybe you ought to start getting to the point where you're like, hey, you bought it, you own it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, because the Virtual Console is not funding the development of that game.
Yeah.
Yes.
I really hope that they do approach Virtual Console a little differently on the NX. I mean, it's really an opportunity to show some goodwill to the community in that regard. You know, does that pay the bills? Not necessarily.
Right.
But, you know, it is time for that, I think. And I think a lot of it has been just the infrastructure of their back-end stuff. How can it support that? And I think with the new Nintendo Network ID account system that they finally have in place, in the last 2 years?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they now finally have it ready so they can do that, because they can identify you as a user outside of the platform. Mm-hmm. Whereas before it's very much tied to the Wii or the DS, and now the Wii U and 3DS are like, all right, cool. Now I know you as a person on the website, on the phone, even on whatever. Great, you exist now as an account. I mean, it's like, you know, welcome to the year 2000, right? But, you know, they finally got there. 16 years late, but but you know, baby steps. But no, so it's good that they finally have that. So yeah, I'm hopeful they'll go into that. But for us doing cross-buy with, I think we first did it with Zero Drifter, but then we kind of more promoted it more with Super Challenge.
Yes.
It was easy. Honestly, it was very easy. We just have to fill out a piece of paper saying, yeah, I want to do that. And they're like, yeah, cool, great, we'll do that then. And there you go, it's done. It's not difficult at all. It had to be until the Nintendo Network ID stuff was set up. Before that, I don't think they could do that.
Okay.
Because there's a few ways of doing it where it has to be either based on your login information, and there are some loopholes that the user can exploit with that, which I won't go into because, you know, exploits and all. And then the other way is you just get the download code through the other platform on your receipt, which is the safest, simplest way, and that's kind of neat actually, because then you can give it to someone if you don't have that platform. I think that's a really neat way of doing it. But no, it's pretty simple now. So people who aren't doing it are choosing not to do it. I called you all out.
That's the thing. You can set yourself apart with everybody else. It's a huge value.
You know what? And that's exactly why we did it.
Yeah.
That's why we did it on Super Challenge. Honestly, it was a very greedy, selfish way of doing it. We're like, hey, Super Challenge is coming out. How do we differentiate ourselves, about the game? Yeah. Let's do cross-buy. We also were part of the Nindies at Home demo, 10% off dealio. We did a loyalty discount if you own the original mods. So we try to really set up everything to give the user, the feeling of, great, I need to get this because there's so many reasons, that I'm benefiting from doing that. So that's why we did it, and they actually scored us a spot on the Nintendo Direct that year.
Yeah, well, I really commend you guys for that too, because not only are you creating the game's small team, but you've also got the guys and the brain power to think about interesting and compelling ways to sell it. So, like,
right.
where does all that marketing power come from? It's just deep with you. It's just in your DNA. That's fine. That's fine. It's
not like we have like a team
usually it's like
here
separate. Yeah, exactly.
No, it's and that's the day that we started Renegade Kid. I really and for me that was just creative independence. I'd worked for other people for so long before that. It really felt like the first day of really starting my career, even though I've been doing it for 13 odd years before that. It felt like I was my kid self again in my bedroom, messing around on Shoot 'em Up construction kit. But now I'm doing it, and now I actually know what I'm doing. Awesome.
That's awesome.
So I just love games, and I've always been a fan of games on the outside, and I really enjoy the PR, the hype of a game. I loved it back then on the Amiga with the Bitmap brothers doing things like Speedball and Xeno 2 and Gods and Magic Pockets, blah, all that fun stuff. I really enjoyed the way they presented their games, and they kind of would start off with an announcement or a screenshot, a little snippet to kind of get you interested, and then they were very careful and selective of what they released over time up until release, just like Capcom did on the SNES days and stuff like that, and Konami. They were very careful with their PR and how they placed and got the users excited, and I love that. I love to be a part of that. It totally worked on me. I was like, this is awesome. It's exciting. So when you get that game, you turn it on, and you hear their logo, you're like, yes, and you jump in, and it's just a great experience. So that, I'm like, I enjoyed that. If I can recreate that in any way with our games, awesome. And I see that as that's the way you do it, because it worked on me, so maybe it'll work on other people. And it's exciting. It's just part of the experience. It's not just, here's the game, here's 20 screenshots that all look the same, here's the game, catch you later. Where's the showmanship in that, you know?
The two things that I take away, I love indie games. I'm a huge proponent of indie games. And the two things that I've always taken away over the past 4 or 5 years now that I've been really diving in and playing a lot of them is, one, you guys are giving us stuff that we don't know that we want until we get it. And it reminds me, it's very reminiscent of old school Nintendo back on the NES, where you would get stuff and you didn't know if it was good, bad, what it was. You just try. I mean, there was no Legend of Zelda. There was no Super Mario Brothers. There was no Castlevania. We were getting firsthand all of that stuff for the first time. Same thing with you guys. Like, what Mutant Mudds does, you know, what Zombie Vikings does, what SteamWorld Heist does, and Dig, like, and you guys are huge with that. Like, none of your games, other than Mudds, is kind of like, it's all standalone, different experiences, and that's what's crazy. Like, you would think that, like, nowadays, if you put a game out like Mudds, you're doing Mudds for the rest of your career. That's it.
Totally.
You know, I mean, honestly, you know, look at you have Naughty Dog, which is talking about Uncharted, like, what have we been doing Uncharted for like 15, 20 years almost, and now they're talking about leaving it behind, and it's like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? So it's like, and they've only done 4 games, you know? So, and then the other thing that I admire and I like is you guys all work so well together. And it's like insanity that, like, you can just pick up the phone and call Brian and be like, hey, can I get Rusty to come in Mudds? And he's like, yeah, go ahead. You know what I mean? And vice versa stuff. How does it get to that level? Like, how does it get to the point where you're just calling people up and asking them to?
Yeah, it is amazing. It's a really good time for that, and it's crazy because even in the time since we started Renegade Kid, and now there's a time where that wasn't possible, and now it is, and a lot of it is because of the digital medium. You know, you're allowed to buy and sell games digitally, and it's not all on the shelf. So that obviously then allows and encourages us as indies to be able to actually publish our own stuff, which is amazing. So now we don't have to work with publishers, and we can be more creative and be more risky because it's, you know, we live and die by our own stuff, which is really exciting. So that was it. That's a huge part of it, you know. And obviously Mudds was our first digital release, self-published kind of game. But I think shows like PAX and E3, for me anyway, in the States, that's where I get to meet, you know, a lot of people. Or if I haven't met them, I mean, or we'll do podcasts like this sometimes where there's like a bunch of developers, you know, and maybe that's sometimes the first time you meet people. But I think a lot of it is just mutual respect. I think you have people that are making games, they love to do what they do, they see what someone else is doing, and they love what they're doing, and they love the way they're doing it, their attitude. They're not like prima donnas or whatever. And they're like, oh, I respect that. That's really cool. And, you know, you're encouraged to contact them and kind of, you know, chat, and especially if you're, like I say, if you're at a show, grab a beer and talk about games and stuff. Yeah, it's a big thing on the Steam, you know, community as well. A lot of Steam developers will do a lot of kind of cross-pollination with different characters. Obviously, Super Meat Boy being one of the first, maybe not the first, I don't know, but one of the first, had a lot of characters in there. Same with Bit Trap Runner and those types of games as well. So it's definitely, you know, I'm not sure who pioneered it, but it seemed to begin back there somewhere, you know, in that era, which then inspires, you know, me to be like, hey, that's really cool. I wonder if I reach out to the people I know or don't know, if they'd be interested in doing that. And I can't believe we scored 20, you know, characters, you know, for a super challenge, and everyone was like, yeah, sure, I don't care. You know, some wanted a contract, some didn't. It wasn't all it wasn't all cookie cutter. Some were like, yeah, sure. We got an email, we're good. And some were like, well, I want to put this contract in place. Well, that's cool, whatever. I mean, there's no money exchanging hands. It's just, oh, that would be cool, yes. If someone said, hey, I want a percentage of your profits, you'd be like, yeah, that's not really what we're doing.
And that's the spirit that comes through, really, is that you all just want the best for the industry, for the games, and for your characters, and that, you know, you're making, you know? Totally.
Yeah. It's just exciting, and everyone, it's just everyone doing everyone favors. You know,
that spirit definitely comes through. I just love it.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's really, really cool. It's an exciting time, I think, to be a developer with a digital. You know, the way to, you know, self-publish your own games. It really has opened up a whole world awesomeness in that way.
And no lawyers involved at all. It's all just handshakes and beers, and that's it.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the biggest one that blew me out of the water lately was Runbow. How it's their first game. They don't know nobody. They're calling people up and being like, "Hey, we want to make this game," and everybody's like, "Yes, go." Take
Smart
my character
guys,
and do it.
Yeah, they're very driven, super nice guys. And they worked really hard to secure that. They worked really hard to work with Nintendo. They have the game coming out on 3DS.
Yes.
In a box soon. Totally. So there's lots of amazing examples of good stuff. So man, it was a lot of work though, man, doing the characters for Super Challenge, because I basically had to create most of those. I had a friend who did some of them, but I had to kind of do all those. That was an interesting, fun / grueling task to kind of recreate that. I think the one that I was most worried about was Abe from Oddworld. I'm like, how the hell am I going to do a 24 pixel high version of him that doesn't look crap and somehow looks okay in this game? I'm like, I left that was the last one. I'm like, I have no idea what I'm going to do. I don't know how I'm going to do this. Thank God it worked out okay. It turned out good in the end, but I was very worried about that one.
That's awesome.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, I think the first one was Steamworld Dig, getting Rusty in there.
Yeah.
And I have to give credit to them. Like I think I sent them something and they sent it back. Actually, no, my friend also helped create some of it as well. So that was the first one. Michael Veroni, I've worked with him a lot. He does a lot of stuff with us with the treasure knots and stuff like that. Yeah. And that turned out so good. And it was so weird when you play the game as Rusty, and you're like, the gameplay is identical. It's exactly the same game. It feels different. It makes absolutely no logical sense, but it feels different. Especially if you're playing the desert world, you're like, Rusty's in the desert.
Yeah,
it totally makes sense. Yeah. It's so awesome.
Yeah.
So it's really neat.
So working with, I got to bring this up because a couple of months ago I was listening to NVC, Nintendo Voice Chat, and you were on there. And
cool.
Yeah, and you were talking about how you approached Nintendo to bring over the Wario game from Virtual Console.
Right.
I mean, for the Virtual Boy. And they said, have you heard anything from that since?
No, I haven't.
Should we start like a tweet campaign to try to get this going? Because that would be so cool.
Yeah, definitely go for it. I don't think it's going to happen, unfortunately. I mean, it would have been. It would have been amazing. It would have been cool, but it's probably too late now. With the internet on the horizon.
I think you were right on track though, because that to me is the perfect platform to bring those games, because they weren't really virtual reality. Let's be honest. It was kind of like their first foray into 3D.
It was just early 3DS basically.
Exactly.
That's what it was.
Except for you didn't get headache on the new ones. You don't get headaches. Well, that's not true. On the 3DS before the new 3DS, if you kept that 3D locked on and you moved it around, you had to like keep your arms like locked in place to not get it.
It was a challenge. It was a very narrow window. But yeah, I agree. I'm actually really shocked. It's a very missed opportunity. I mean, I think, and we wanted, I don't think you could have just only had the red and black ports. I think people would have been like, this is a bit weird. I mean, most, aficionados would have been like, yes, this is the way it should be. And of course, we would have done that.
Yeah.
But then doing the DX versions where they're full colored in that Game Boy Color kind of palette, which is what that mock that I did for Wario Land was, I took the the Game Boy Color colors from I guess Wario 2, 3, whatever it was on the Game Boy Color, and then applied that to the screenshot of the Virtual Boy version, and then did it in 3D. So it looked pretty authentic. It looked like, it's a DX version of a Wario game. Wow, it blew me away. I'm like that, and then when you get it in 3D, you're like, oh my gosh, that's awesome. So that was the proposal, is we would do color versions, but obviously at a press of a button, it would revert back to the red and black if you really wanted that. But it seemed like that's the perfect opportunity. If you're ever going to release them, do it on that platform,
Yeah, that's
just the way they're supposed to be experienced in true, awesome 3D, without headaches, like you say. And whatever. So
was part of your way of kind of like honoring the Virtual Boy, like kind of having some of those special shaded, like some of the red and black colors in Mutant Mudds, like is that where that comes from, or are we just reading way too much into that?
Oh no, definitely. I mean, Mudds is unabashedly stands, on the shoulders of Wario Land, Virtual Boy, without a doubt, as well as Mario World and a ton of other, Gargoyle's Quest, and about 5 other games I can't think of. For sure.
So then, like, where do we go from here? Then it sounds like there's a huge foundation for you guys to continue to build. Or should we expect more from the Mutant Mudds world, or are there other kind of ideas percolating for you guys to take that foundation and go somewhere else?
All of the above, for sure. I mean, we're not short on ideas, that's for sure. I love Mudds, though, so I definitely will be visiting that world again. You know, Super Challenge was a really fun exercise because it's, you know, how do I take that and make it balls hard, you know, basically, like to the point where you literally have to be a pro to kind of get through it.
I want that on, like, box art. Like on the back of the quote. Game is balls hard. Jools Watsham.
So anyway, that was a really fun kind of, I don't know, experiment to try that, and it's a tough challenge because, like, wow, I have to make 40 levels, but the gameplay is essentially identical. But I need it to present, you know, something that you know is of value and is interesting to someone. And I know that they've played, or I'm assuming they've played the first game, so they're fully aware of everything that's in there. So you can't just take that and reproduce it because what's the point? So it was a really fun challenge, and I think I pulled it off. I'm happy with it. I kind of had a list of things, you know, to do as I was making each level to try and increase the newness, the sense of freshness of the game compared to the first game. Not only in challenge, of course, but also trying to use the jumping back and forth more creatively. And you know, we added, you know, some new elements as such as the blocks that you have to shoot out and going behind the secret walls to get the gems and stuff like that. Like, I can't even think of it all now, but a few extra things anyway, which is really fun. Like when you play through the game, through each level, it does feel really different than when you're playing the original mods, which is really fun. But anyway,
sorry, go ahead.
It's okay. I was going to say, I mean, but a Mods 2 is certainly possible, for example. I mean, we're definitely going to come back to Mods, you know. But we'd love to go back to Zeo Drifter. I mean, you know, and plus we have new ideas as well. I mean, and of course, Treasure Noughts is still happening on the horizon as well.
Okay, second studio confirmed. Third studio.
My thing is when I played the first Muds, like I said, it was a challenge, but I think it was because it was new. But the that mechanic of bouncing back and forth is so perfect, and it's like you would think too, like when he comes forward, Max comes forward, it would get blurry. It doesn't. It keeps the pixels dead on, and then it actually gets better when it goes to the furthest point and stuff. And it's just like, this is amazing. Like, it's just awesome, that back and forth. And because when I first played it, I thought, you know, when you're looking at it, you're looking at pictures and stuff. It's still pictures. It obviously don't do it any justice. And I'm just like, okay, this is like a 2D platformer kind of pixel. I love pixel art, so I'm like, this is awesome. I'm gonna get it. Then when I was like, where do I go? And I see this like arrow. I'm like, what the heck am I doing? And I jumped, and it threw me to the background. I was like, holy crap, this is the greatest thing ever. This is amazing. I
remember the first time that I experienced that when we were creating it. I was blown away. Yeah. Like, that was to see Max jump in depth into the background was like, holy crap, that's even though I played it on Wario Land, I think seeing it in color for the first time and seeing it in decent 3D for the first time, you know, and the effort we put into it, and the difference between like Wario Land and Mutant Mudds, for example, is Wario Land, they you know, it's a relatively limited machine. It's essentially like a Super Game Boy, you know, but you know, with 3D and stuff like that. It's not that crazy powerful. It's not like Super Nintendo or even NES. It's more like an enhanced Game Boy in a way. But as far as its power, so what they did is when Wario jumps, you know, into the background, it's actually animating the sprite, and him in the background is a different sprite than him in the foreground. It's different artwork. So it's an illusion. They're changing the way it looks, and in the background art is redrawn to look smaller in the background, and that foreground art is just regular art. And that's how they pulled off the illusion. And of course, then you put it in stereoscopic 3D. You're like, oh my god, that looks amazing. Yeah. So what we did with Muds, though, is actually very different than that. Well, we're like, all right, great, we want to do this. How can we do this? And we'd like to add 3 layers, because why not? So we're like, great. The resolution of the 3DS is 400 pixels across by 240 high, awesome, and that's what you're seeing when you're in the background, is 1:1 perfect 3DS resolution, and Max is freaking tiny. And you're like, you can't play the game like that, that'd be absurd. So then the next layer takes that exact artwork and duplicates it 200%, boom, and that's your regular action layer now, and it still looks decent, now he's that size and he looks reasonable for that screen ratio. And then we took that background, and scale it up 300%, and that's what the foreground is. So that it takes all the artwork, and it is literally scaling back and forth, and then you put the 3D in there as well. So it is super crisp, each layer, because it is an exact, precise 100% step each time. So it doesn't get all gross and anti-alias and stuff. It works out perfect. But the tricky thing is you're designing a game which is essentially 200 pixels by 120 high when you're in the middle layer, which is most of the time, which is pretty small. And then you're in the foreground layer, oh my god, it's like freaking tiny. I mean, you can't do much up when you're in foreground. It's like 100 by whatever. So so it's really, and then so we did that first, but then we knew it had to support 2D as well, because some people are going to turn the 3D off. So we're like, most. So we're like, okay, how can we also make this work, for 2D people? And that's why the 100%, 200%, 300% also works. The literal scale of the layers will help, trigger that to your mind. Where am I? But that still wasn't enough. So what we did was we tint the background. Like the far layer is tinted with a single color, like 30%. So if the sky is blue, it will be all tinted slightly blue. Gotcha. To send it further back. And then the foreground has that sense of silhouette where it always fades off to black. So there's always blackness, and then there's the platform. Whereas the middle ground, you have the platform on top of brown, dirt or green or whatever, or ice. So that's kind of how we did it, where there's the black silhouette in the foreground, regular in the middle, and the far background is slightly tinted like it's fogged out in the the far background. Anyway, so that's kind of how we approach it.
I love it.
You put those pieces together, and you're like, it works. You have to have those, each piece. If you miss out one of those pieces, it kind of, the illusion falls apart, And then when we put it on the Wii U and stuff, we had the rack of focus blur. So when you're in, it focuses on the layer you're at. So you jump in the background, the foreground layer gets really blurry, the middle one gets slightly blurry, but as soon as you jump, this one adjusts and that one adjusts, and this becomes focus, and that, I think, looks freaking awesome.
Yeah,
I mean, some people don't like it, but I'm like, whatever. I think it looks awesome. So whatever.
It looks awesome.
Jumping back and forth and seeing the focus changing I love that.
Well, it gives dimension, it gives perspective. Yeah. I mean, that's ultimately what you want to do. You want to give that first off, if you're playing, you want to be able to see your character and control them precise. I think it makes it does. When you're playing on the Wii U and he jumps to the background, it's just like, oh my god, because it looks perfect. It
was really fun. It was a really fun experiment to kind of take what Wario Land did and fully respect that we are stealing it from them. Great, but what can we do to try and enhance it a little bit for the current platform, and maybe hopefully make it better, hopefully refine that a little bit. And I think we did. We spent a lot of time in figuring out all of those elements to make it all make sense. And the first time we got that working and we're jumping back and forth, like, oh my gosh, this is so neat. So it was it was cool.
I can imagine that payoff is just unbelievable. I want to close out on this one before we jump into our topics here. You mentioned a couple times kind of you experience a moment while you guys are developing things, and you're seeing something, you realizing an idea happen, and it's come to life in front of you. What is it like, I guess, is it like an internal barometer for you to think, like, I think this is great? It seems to me that every time you think something is great, the general consensus is that it is great. Is there always a sense of panic, or are you fairly confident in your, I guess, like an internal kind of like barometer that I think this is a great idea, it's paying off exactly how I had in mind, and now that it's in a game, are you still kind of worried, or are you fairly confident at that point that people will sort of react positively to it?
I don't think there's a clear-cut single way of an idea always translating into something that actually is a good idea. I think sometimes you're inspired by another game or something else in the world, or a movie or whatever, as far as the idea, and then you actually have like reference. So I'm more of someone that, like, there are some creative people where they very much work in a vacuum and are creating like an artistic statement for themselves, and that's kind of what their mission is, and they don't really care if anyone plays it or buys it, they just want to accomplish that artistic vision. That's not me. I'm not that person. I like reference. I like to be more practical about it, more constructive about it, more analytical about it, more logical about it. But I'm also creative as well, so I appreciate the softer things as well in amongst that. So for me, MUDs is very much the product of Wario Land, the jumping in and out. That's a perfect fit for the 3DS. That'd be so cool in 3D, in color, blah, the rest of it. The gameplay of Gargoyle's Quest, where you jump, you hover, and with Gargoyle's Quest, you're attached to the wall and you can go up there. It has other stuff going on. But I love the basic gameplay of jumping, hovering, and then landing. I'm like, that's pretty unique. Not many games have done that. Great, we'll take that. It was kind of like, it was a weird hodgepodge of experiences that I'd enjoyed in different games, and this was the first opportunity to try and do a 2D platformer, but it had to be different. It can't just be another Mario, it can't just be a whatever. So it was like, great, the jumping in and out, the hovering thing, and then the shooting, but then making it, very black and white. When you run, it's on. When you stop, it's off. There's no inertia. There's nothing going on. It's just very digital. Was very deliberate as well, because we knew that we wanted you to land on an 8-pixel wide platform without dying. If you had the skills, if you had any inertia, that's going to be impossible and really frustrating. Ice. So for that, it was very logical in many respects, as far as, bolting these things together. But that doesn't mean it's going to work. You may actually, this may be like, oh, this is genius, take all these ideas, put it together, put it in there. You may play it and go, wow, that's garbage. That did not work. Wow, that's a shocker.
But I think that's what's coming across, is that sort of discipline of, yes, this is good, I genuinely believe this is a good idea, let's continue with it and flesh it out in the game, versus, you know what, this isn't what we had in mind, let's cut it. And then that really is what I think ends up in a game like Mutant Mudds, and that's where you end up with a success. So that's I just kind of wanted to dive into that mindset.
Actually, and to expand upon that, I'm very much of the mind of everything in the game, especially from a gameplay perspective, but really everything in the game is there for a reason. It has to serve a purpose. You don't just put, I can't think of an example, but you don't just put a move in the game just because it's cool. Oh, would it be cool if? And sometimes, yes, it would be cool. Let's just support that. But the key is the player package is the yin and the level is the yang, and they have to fit together. They coexist for that reason. You can't just have this player with this ability, but the level never challenges that ability. What's the point of having that ability? Right. So very much of the mindset of everything that's in there is in there for a reason, but try and make it as minimal and as simple and as less as possible, and only build when it absolutely needed to then expand it. You don't add on top to fix a problem that exists, because if a problem exists, fix it before you add more to it, kind of thing. So it's very much like a building a house. You need a nice stable foundation. If your foundation's shoddy, then the house is going to fall down. So, yeah, very much a logical kind of approach. But then it's interesting creatively, depending on your mood. I find it's really good to have like a layered approach to things, where you may have like a logical kind of like, I'm in this mood, so I'm just going to kind of do these kind of non-creative, more kind of logical type of approaches to it, and then I'll have the fun kind of like dreamy kind of anything's possible kind of design brainstorming sessions separately. You don't try and do them together. So typically the beginning of a project's the super fun time, because then you're like, anything's possible, this is gonna be awesome, oh my gosh, everyone's gonna love it.
That's our podcast every week.
And then you get practical and boring and kind of break it down and kind of bring it to reality later. You don't try and do it at the same time, because then you get nowhere. So I mean, I think games designed by committee, it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. It's okay to have people's feedback. It's very important. You want people's ideas, but it has to be used properly. You can't all just sit around 5 people, no matter how good or bad they might be. You can't just all sit around a table and go, great, let's make a game then. All right, well, what should the player do?
That might be the magic that's in these indie games, is that you guys are teams that can do everything. You don't need the committee. You can have the idea and you can implement it all in the same thing, instead of usually the committee is kind of built out of people who these, like as I mentioned before, with marketing people do this and they're concerned about this, and then there's all these different teams that have to make it all work. But you guys have the ability to kind of translate it all the way down to the actual game. So I think that might be That might be part of
And
it.
I think we all probably still have those committees, but it's your wife, your girlfriend, your son, your friend. I mean, you go out into the real world and go, what do you think of this? And
Sure.
if you get a lot of people saying it's great or that's awful, you're like, okay. And then when you get to the point where it's playable, which I love about the 3DS, you can take it with you. People can play it anywhere in the world, and then they can play it, and especially with mods. I remember we took it to E3 2011. And just watching people play and where they failed and what they didn't understand and what I took for granted, they were like, "What?" And I'm like, "Wow!" And that's very important. I think a lot of what the big companies do is obviously very important, and I think all the indies do that as well, but in their own more organic, probably I think more effective ways. There's no bureaucratic stuff to get through, and people who are there just because they want to get paid and they're trying to impress their boss. There's none of that, So it's all just for the game. It's the game that's the most important. How to make it the best, and that's really the only agenda. And I think that's why then indies are able to kind of create these incredible games that would never come out of a big company because they'd be shot down for various reasons.
So speaking of games that you can bring along with you, like on the 3DS, tell us exactly how is it developing for the Nintendo NX?
I wish I knew, man. I wish I knew.
He tried to get you in a little corner there.
Oh my gosh.
Well, let's do this. Let's. Okay. Stop trying to pigeonhole the guest, Sean. That's ridiculous.
It's all in good fun.
Dude, I'm totally gonna be making games for the NX. What are you talking about?
I expect you will. As soon as they send you a dev kit, you'll be good to go. So the main idea here behind the whole show is a lot of times what spawned this for me and Sean. I don't know really if you have listened to anything that we've done, Jules. Probably like 1 million people out there have never listened to an episode. There's like 5 people that listen to us each week. But we do this thing where we play this little game where we pick topics. And we just discussed, like, if we ran Nintendo, how would we fix it, and how would we do it? And the whole brain idea came out of just the idea of all the time you hear people just go, oh, Nintendo's stupid for doing that. Oh, they didn't do that. That's stupid. But they don't ever follow it up with what they would do if they ran Nintendo. Right. So that's where it all started. So since we had you on, we kind of wanted to do this as well, and you were gracious enough to agree to do this. So let's get into that. Let's do that. So the question is, if we ran Nintendo, how would we bring back or find a way to get the third parties to return to us and start to help to develop, we're just going to assume with the NX. I have a couple ideas. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to. Jules, I'm sure you have some ideas.
Sure.
But I think I'm going to throw. I'll start off with what I have. One of the things that I have, and we'll kind of bounce off of there from there. I think the one thing that some third parties are looking for that I would wholeheartedly do is I think they want to focus on them, and I think they want to focus because that basically helps them to sell games and move forward and all that such. I would start offering bundles. 90% of the time when Nintendo puts out a console, it's Nintendo games in that box. That's the one thing that we really saw Sony start to do in this last cycle with the PS4s was you were getting a whole bunch, like Metal Gear Solid got a console, Arkham Knight got a console. That's what made me buy a game because I'm a huge Batman fan, and I was like, I'm buying that console. I got to get that console, So I think that's one step is a way to.
That would be amazing. Oh my gosh, yeah, that would be amazing. I mean, obviously it's. Yeah, you'd have to do a bundle with a bunch of games, right? Because you couldn't just be like, one for every developer. But yeah, no, because that's the way it was, the way it used to be. You'd buy it and you'd get a bunch of games in there, and that was exciting. I remember that with the Amiga. Again, getting back to my kind of growing up in Europe, there was the Batman bundle, funnily enough, and it had Batman from then. But it had other games as well. But that was, it was a black box and the Batman logo looked freaking awesome. But yeah, totally. I mean, I agree. I mean, bundles would be incredible, especially because now they can be packed in. They can be on the console, or you have codes, whatever. But they don't have to be physical; they can be digital, which is very cost effective. But yeah, totally, that'd be amazing. Yeah. I agree.
The next thing I thought was, there's been a lot of conversation and rumors that the NX is going to move towards cartridges or go back to cartridges. Obviously, it's not going to be the old big Super NES or N64 Nintendo cartridges. And I think that's the first thing everybody thought. Nobody's even thinking in their minds, like, they still use cartridges today. Like, the 3DS uses cartridges and all that stuff. Yep. I feel like they're going to lean more towards that way. Now, the talk is that, obviously, if they go back to cartridges, it's going to cost more money than it would be to produce a disc-based game. I don't know the exact numbers and what it's going to cost, the difference. My answer would be real simple. If you make a game you're building the game on the NX, we're going to cut the costs. So there is no cost difference. Whatever it costs you to put it on disc, we're going to say to you, don't worry about that. It's going to be the same price to build it on a cartridge. Now, take it one step further. What I would do is, if you're going to do an exclusive game that's strictly for us, we're going to cut that cost a little bit cheaper, and now, hopefully, you make a little bit extra money on the backside in order to try to two things: get people to develop specifically for your console, and to get them to make exclusive games for the console. Because I think ultimately that kind of helps, Nintendo, and it helps, you know, if you're doing exclusives.
It's a good idea. I mean, it will be interesting to see what kind of media they use. I mean, it does sound like they're going to go physical kind of cartridge. But yeah, if they can get it really, that's what's so clever about Nintendo is they always, typically, or not always, but they typically try to use relatively not brand new technology, slightly old technology, where the price is way down than it was when it first came out. Therefore, they can mass produce on a much cheaper scale than their competitors, basically. And I'm hoping they do that with the cartridge as well. I'm hoping it's not some crazy, amazing, cutting-edge thing where it's crazy expensive and everyone's like, this is like 5 times more expensive than a DVD or whatever for Sony or Microsoft. So, yeah, so hopefully it's, at least 32 gig, if not more, hopefully more than that, and you get it for just a few dollars per unit as far as cost would be amazing. I agree, that would be very important because it is going to be a huge deterrent for those people. I don't know what the cost of goods are on Microsoft and PS4, Xbox One. I'm not sure, but I'm sure it's only a couple of bucks. I have no idea. But yeah, usually a cartridge is 2, 3, 4 times more expensive than that, and you're like, So yeah, good point. I agree. That would be awesome.
Yeah, I think there's probably monetary incentives to have third parties come on board, but there's probably, Jools, you could probably speak to this better than any of us, really. Like, how much does it play into it where, like, how difficult it is to develop a game for, how difficult it is to code a game for, say, a Nintendo platform versus Sony? We heard a lot about the cell processor with PS3 being very difficult. So how big a factor do you think that is to have third parties come over? Is it easy to develop for, or equally easy to port from other systems? Is that
it's huge.
Like, how important is that?
Yeah, I think it's huge. We're different because Nintendo's usually our lead platform, so it doesn't really affect us. But I think a huge reason a lot of people haven't brought games over to the Wii U, for example, is because it's less power than like a PS4, Xbox One. So they actually have a whole new art asset list just for that, at least just for that game to run at a decent frame rate on the Wii U, and then whatever code to support that as well. So it's a pretty significant effort. Whereas the difference between PS4 and Xbox One, from the outset, if they know they're making it for those two platforms, they can just make a single game, generally speaking, as far as and test it on both and go, yep, great, it's running. Let's just stay underneath those benchmarks, and it'll run fine on both platforms. We're good to go. And the Wii U just didn't quite fit in that easy spread. Yeah. And plus the Wii U came later anyway, so it already, a lot of games already been determined and were already going. So, so I think it's very important.
And in terms of like developing for the Xbox One, for the PlayStation 4, like does Nintendo even have a chance to maybe undercut in a way? Like, is there any way to make it less expensive to develop for the Wii U? Like, is that an incentive that they can explore, or is it pretty much a non-factor on those other platforms?
I mean, they definitely did that with the Wii, for example. I think the Wii was...
That's exactly where I'm going, yeah.
Was a brilliant positioning, and it's almost the exact opposite of the Vita, for example, or the PSP, whereas the Wii, you could make... what's perceived as a top-tier premium game for with 10 people and whatever money budget, depending on the game, like relatively modest. Whereas you have like the Vita or the PSP, especially the Vita, where it's essentially a PS2, PS3 kind of power. You're like, wow, like full-on console power in your hand. But the games only sell for a smaller amount because handheld, so it has the perception of being lower cost.
Right.
But the games and the teams are AAA, and then you have Sony coming out with God of War and you name it, really setting the bar super high, and you're like, I can't compete with that for less than $10 million.
Yeah.
But you want me to sell it for $20? Thanks. Whereas the Wii was the exact opposite of that. Like, yeah, come on in, you know, just hack and slash, make some cool games, get them out, sell them for $20, $30, and we're good to go. And that's people abused that and sold a bunch of crap as well. Yeah. But there were some great games on there, and it had nothing to do with the hardware or the power. It was the design and the developer publisher's ability to get in there and do it at a decent cost. So that can be really important. And again, that goes back to Nintendo being very smart and using older tech, not always having to push forward in crazy high tech. And hopefully they do the same with the NX, where it's at least Wii U graphic capability, because the Wii U looks fantastic in my opinion. Yeah. So that on a small screen, obviously you'll have it on a TV as well. So
sure.
You can't relay just on the small screen, but the Wii U looks fantastic. So you could totally get away with that for the NX, in my opinion. Some people are like, no, it must be more, whatever, blah, but whatever. But if it's at least that or a little bit more, we're golden, and that's all.
Yeah, it needs to be. It almost means that you have to stick to a single screen now. It seems to me like that you have to go back to that.
From a multi-platform perspective, anyway, it's good in that regard. Yeah.
I think we're in a situation now where, obviously, to get third party, let's be honest. Let's be 100% honest. Other than indie developers, they've basically been abandoned by third parties. I think you have a couple, which is like maybe Activision, Warner Brothers with the Lego games. You got some Sega. Square games. Yeah, Sega. Yeah, obviously.
Oddly enough.
That's how strange is that? Yeah. And so most of the third parties have abandoned Nintendo. So it is an uphill battle, I feel, to get them back.
Yep.
And I'll be honest with you, what scares me a little bit is with the stuff that's coming out with the NX. I think, like I was reading today, like Emily Rogers was tweeting about she's tired of people. She wants Nintendo to come out with specs because she's tired of people being upset that the NX isn't a PS4 killer. And I don't think she's grasping the concept of the reason why they wanted it to be a PS4 killer, and not necessarily to kill off the PS4, because nothing's going to kill that thing off. That thing is an animal right now.
Yeah.
But the idea is that third party, this is what people have ingrained in their minds because they really don't think outside the box. Third parties will not come to the NX because it's going to be less powerful than the PS4. Well, the Wii U's not as strong as the PS4 or the Xbox One, and they're not developing there. So if Nintendo doesn't get up to par with that, they're not going to develop there. Which I feel like that's where Nintendo has to do incentives, get some stuff to get people to come back to them. But at the same time, if they move consoles, they're going to get people are going to develop where the fans are.
Yeah, that's really it.
And
I
that's
think that's their strategy. I think their strategy. I don't. I wouldn't necessarily do this if I was Nintendo, but I think what Nintendo's doing is they're not relying on third party. They are just square out like it. They saw it not really working on the N64, GameCube. So Wii U. I think the Wii it kind of screwed them in the end of the day because you got so much crap on there. There's a lot of garbage. So that the third party kind of screwed the Wii legs in its twilight years, and then the Wii U absolutely abandoned. So I think this time they're like, okay, there's nothing we can do to compete with the other guys out there as far as third party. There's literally all we can do. We either play their game, which is not what they're going to do, by just doing this amazing freaking Cadillac of whatever gaming with all this power and what bells and whistles. That's not Nintendo. What's the point? Leave Sony and Microsoft to do that. Or PCs with Steam. There's 3 players in that fight already. So they're like, well, so let's just not worry about it. Let's just make something really cool, and they've consolidated their 2 teams, the mobile, the handheld, and the console into one. So I think they're just simply going to be let's just do our thing. Let's make great first-party games, like you said, which will then sell units sell hardware units, and then they have no choice but to come because they can make money here. So that's the incentive, is you can make money here. Because we have so many freaking hardware units out there, and we're exciting, and people like Forbes and people outside the industry are actually talking about us and give a shit about us, where, it's not just a video game industry thing now, it's bigger than that, like the Wii was, but I don't think it'll be as big as the Wii, but it'll be certainly bigger than the Wii U, not saying much. So I think that's the strategy. Let's do some amazing first-party things. We have now 2 teams consolidated into one, so we can get the schedule much better than we did on the Wii U and 3DS era, because that was a disaster. Amazing games, but kind of a cluster. What was my other train of thought there? And then probably partner up with their really close partners in Japan, like Sega, Platinum, etc. Their usual good partners that have produced really good games from the past. I'm sure they're working with them too. I'm sure there's probably some Activision or something else in there as well, to some degree, or Ubisoft, I should say. So I think the focus is just to sell hardware.
I think one thing that they've done recently, and it just got confirmed a couple days ago, was getting Dragon Quest on the NX. Now, whether that comes to the United States or not, that's not a huge thing, but the difference is that if Dragon Quest is on the PS4 and Dragon Quest is on the NX, I guarantee you the NX is going to sell more copies, because people just correlate Dragon Quest with Nintendo. And if it is that hybrid thing where they could take it on the go and play it at home, it's a no-brainer. And I really think that's why they're holding off on releasing all the details, because in the back of their mind, we said this the other day when we were doing the other podcast I do, the Geekcast, and I said to Sean and Alan on there, I said, Sony copycats everything Nintendo does. Regardless, they always find a way to follow suit with it. It's still not late in the game for them to switch and switch a button and say, hey, we're going to move and start doing this hybrid thing too. I think Nintendo wants to get the jump on it and go and get, so I really think that doing what they're doing, obviously the delay, what they're saying, is because they're wanting to make games. If what a lot of stuff is they're saying is true, we know Zelda's coming. If a Mario game is coming at launch, if a Pokemon game is coming at launch, they're heavy hitters. And it's kind of that whole theory, if you build it, they will come. And
it's all about the games. Really, honestly, what they're doing with the hardware, as far as the rumors have told us so far, and I honestly have no clue. I'm in the same boat as everyone else. I have no clue what it is. I wish I did know.
Which honestly, let me just say something. Let me tell you real quick. That's crazy to think that a developer that's been for me personally, and I'm speaking for me, I feel like it's a slap in the face to you and all the indie developers that you guys don't have a development kit yet. When you think of the fact of when all the third parties bailed and jumped ship, who was the one saving them and putting games out every couple of months? It was the indie teams. And that's where I felt how the heck don't you guys have kits yet? And this is nuts. So, go ahead.
Yeah, it is what it is. I mean, I've had to come to terms with it. But I understand it, though. I understand where they're coming from, so I don't have sour grapes about it. I'm just really excited to finally learn what it is, get in there, and make some great games for it. But I forgot what I was going to say now. Damn it.
That's my fault. I apologize.
I was going somewhere with that. But, anyway, whatever. But I think, that's right. But it has to be all about the games, because the reality is the hardware aspect, let's say the rumors, what we've heard so far, are true. You can, it's mobile, great. You can get it working on your TV, great. That already exists. We have that with the Vita. We have that with Apple TV. It's already out there. That's not really new, honestly. It's really not. Now, they can do it in the Nintendo way, which makes it new and special and integrated and freaking awesome compared to everyone else doing it. That's great. That's still not enough, honestly. That's great. So I think it really, unless there's something else, and there are some rumors about the whole kind of motion sensing thing on either side and whatever, blah. I don't know. Whatever. That sounds weird to me, but that could work.
Get me to work on Jools.
But it all comes down to the games, and if they have some amazing knockout games and they have the pace and what they need, that's all they need, and as long as they have a solid machine that actually has a little bit of fun quirk to it that sparks the imagination in people, and especially if it somehow connects with people's phones, even in a rudimentary way, which is not outside the realm of expectation, I don't think. Then I think that's it. It won't be a Wii. It certainly won't be a Wii U, thankfully. But it can be something that is like, oh, it's really neat, and oh my gosh, look at those games. And the Wii U had the games. I love 3D World. I really liked Treasure Tracker, Toad.
Oh yeah.
There's just a bunch of really great games, and I can't even think of them right now. But there's some amazing games on the platform. Some really great enhancements with Wind Waker and stuff like that. Look incredible. So the games were there, and they were freaking awesome. But no one cared. They already had their chance to sell the Wii, and they failed because it was confusing, didn't know what it was, yada, yada, yada. We've already talked about this to 1,000 people already. It failed for multiple reasons, so it didn't matter about the games at that point. Only us, the hardcore, were there and going, yeah, this is awesome, look at this, you should be playing this, you don't care, why don't you care, this is so good. But it's too late, So I think they just need to get the right messaging with the NX and go, boom, it's this. Oh, that's cool, I get it, that's simple, sweet. It's not the Wii, but thankfully it's not the Wii U. And look at that game, oh my gosh. And then they get to kind of start all over again. So, again, it comes down to the games at the end of the day.
Oh, see, that's where, I feel like you just made a huge case for why it's not just about the games, too. But I hate to disagree with you because you're just so freaking charming. I think it is more. I think it's more than just about the games. It has to be about Nintendo proving whatever the concept around the hardware is. They have to be the one to open up and say, not only this is why this tech is neat and why this tech is bananas, I think, as the kids would say, but they have to figure out that idea for the third parties, and then they can jump on board. Instead, what happened with the Wii U is they came out with this idea. It's a new concept, but they didn't really show us why it was awesome and why it worked. We waited and waited and waited. It never really happened. And I think the expectation was that somebody somewhere was going to have this brilliant idea for how to integrate this thing into a really cool idea, which is really surprising too, unfortunately, because we've been playing with two screens for years now with with the DS and the 3DS. So I think on the games, I think, are a given. We're going to get great games on whatever Nintendo platform it is, but they have to, you hit it on the head too with messaging. It has to be about messaging, and it has to be about a proof of concept that comes from Nintendo and not waiting for that to come around. So all of those things, I think, add up to a great install base and a compelling reason to, as you say, go make money on this thing, rather than, and it's about Nintendo's sphere of control. What is their sphere of influence, where they can't really control what the third parties do because they're third parties. That's the nature of their relationship with them. So it's about creating incentives, either through monetary means, like Bobby kind of said, or just inherent incentives of there's a huge ecosystem here, there's great opportunity for everybody to come on board, and that really starts with Nintendo leading the charge like we've known them to do, but I feel like they dropped the ball with the Wii U.
Yeah.
That's my soapbox.
I do agree with you, and that's exactly what I was waiting for with the Wii U. There's the dual screen, there's the thing. I like it. I'm a Nintendo fan. I'm in. Now show me why. What's the special thing? And the first thing they showed on the early videos was, the playing the golf. Putting the golf ball in there and putting it. That was neat. That had promise.
Awesome.
That's pretty neat. You can actually send it from this screen onto that screen. I like that. That's some interesting spatial stuff going on there. But that game never released, I don't think, did it?
It came 2 years later.
Yeah, much later.
They actually put Wii Sports Resort. Wii Sports. They put the golf out.
Yeah.
It came 2 years later, and it was like that should have been launch title. That should have been.
And that wasn't enough, but it was a nice little sprinkle of an idea. And I totally agree with you.
That speaks expectations too, though.
Yeah, it is, and they did it with the Wii. Wii Sports was incredible on the Wii. It was you nailed it. I mean, you got the Wii, you got Wii Sports with it, and you're like tennis, bowling. Oh my gosh, this is amazing! Yeah. The whole family's playing it, having fun. You're done. You're done.
It's a tough act to follow because again, with the DS, there wasn't really anything crazy with that second screen on the DS ever.
No.
But so I think there might have been a case of kind of weird or misplaced expectations with the Wii U, where we were looking for this gamepad to really blow us away or revolutionize things when it had no chance of doing that. We've already seen years and years of
Nintendo never proved the concept.
Yeah.
And they have with every console. Well, not every. Well, like I said, maybe the DS they didn't really, right? I'm trying to think.
That's what I'm saying. Like they kind of just did what they did on the DS, and for some reason it blew us away on the DS. And
but the problem is,
maybe with the gamepad.
The problem was that they did prove what the gamepad was all about, but it was too late. Mm-hmm. You know, when you had Mario Maker, that should have been a launch title. When you had Splatoon come, that should have been a launch title. Like, I know you can't make them launch titles, but if those games were launch titles, I don't even think we're talking NX right now. I think we're still talking about Wii U and still going.
They're not really even that unique to Wii U, though, right? They're just good games.
Well, but I mean, at least with Mario Maker, you have to.
The stylus.
You have to have the stylus. You have to, because it makes it easier to do the stuff.
For sure. But that could have easily.
That was, yeah,
totally. But I mean, that could be an iPad game, right? I mean, technically, then
absolutely.
for that reality. But that's the thing. Yeah, I mean, I think that's what it was. Like exactly, Sean. Like with the Wii U, like because you had every Nintendo console apart from the DS. Had typically a Mario game that came out and went boom. This is what this platform was all about, and everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, I love it." And then I think the Wii was the first one where it was a Wii Sports game, and everyone was like, "Oh my god, I love it." But then the Wii U came out, and you're like, and the DS came out. I don't know why. How did the DS do so well? We'll get back to that in a minute, I guess. But the Wii U, it just didn't have it. Yeah, what was the deal with the DS? I think it was pricing. You know, I don't know. It was pretty cheap.
I think they had a lot of, you know what the problem... You know
what were some of the original games on it now?
Sudoku.
Grandparents getting it.
Nintendogs, yeah, exactly.
Nintendogs was a big one.
Yeah, like it was games like that was geared towards... Because that was
more
another one of those...
kid thing, wasn't it?
And they did a lot of those brain age things. Like that was another one that was kind of little kids.
Well, that was pre-phones as well, so the touch... Yeah. Well, you had Blackberries maybe, but you know the touch was innovative there, and you're like, oh, this is so cool. And it was new and fresh, and I guess they did tap into it pretty well, more so than the Wii U anyway. There's all old hat by that point. Yeah. I love the DS. I remember the E3 when they revealed the DS next to the PSP, and I was like, "Oh man, the DS is dead. The PSP is going to win," because they look so sexy. Yeah. The wall of PSPs looked so different colors, all floating in space. It looked amazing. The DS was such a brick, man. I was like, "This is so ugly."
It was.
I love Nintendo, but it was such an ugly brick. I'm like, "Oh, this is it. This is the Nintendo handheld." I was so wrong, so happy to be wrong.
Listen, I thought the same thing with the Vita. When they announced the Vita, I was like, oh, Nintendo's in trouble. And when the Vita and the 3DS both launched, they both came out, they tripped out of the blocks. And I was like, oh, this is bad.
And when they cut the price in 3DS, that was a very historical moment. That was very strange. It was scary but exciting, right?
That, to me, was what was killing that. Because... Yeah. I think it launched at, 300 or 350?
I think it was 3.
I think it was 350 when it...
Was 350?
I thought it was...
Isn't that crazy to think that? Oh my gosh. We need to look that up.
Yeah, it might have been 3.
I'll look it up.
You know what? I think it was 3. And then they dropped it to 250.
Where's the Wikipedia? There we go. Will it tell me? I don't know if it'll tell me. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, so when I originally got mine... You were talking about, because it had just come out with the DSi XL, which was the big one. And then that was 200. Then they came out with the 3DS, which was, it might have been 250, if I'm not mistaken. And that was smaller. It was going back to the small size, and that was more money than the DSi XL.
So it relaunched at 250 in the US.
Okay, 250.
And they cut it less than 6 months later down to 169.
Yes.
Boosh.
Yes. Because then they went down to almost the price of an actual DS, the small size.
Yeah.
Then they also gave you 20 free games. That's what blew me away. Was we're going to not only cut the price, but if you're an ambassador, you had to be an ambassador. If you had bought the console before we did the price slash,
which I did,
they actually gave you a date.
Yes, I have Fusion. Oh,
we're going to give you.
Because I read in these comments, like, why isn't the Fusion coming out 3DS? Like, I have that. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Sorry.
So we got 20 games for free, and they were good games. They weren't like garbage. They were all good, classic. I mean, we had them already, but it was just the fact that, like, hey, I'm going to get 20 games for free, and I'm good. So that's all. That is all. Thank you guys. Sean knows what I do.
I love when you say that.
Jools, thank you so much for coming on, man. We wholeheartedly appreciate this. This was awesome for us.
Yeah, it's great, Jim. I appreciate it.
Let everybody know, like, where you can be found at and all that stuff. And
Twitter, I guess, mainly at Jools Watsham, JOOLSWATSHAM. So that's mainly where I'm out, hanging out, and talking about silly stuff. And yeah, that's probably the best place.
Sean, you can follow him on Twitter. Sean like Connery, Capri like the pants. You can follow me at Nintendo Gurus. That is all. See me later.
Bye.
You didn't want to do that this week because Jools was here. You didn't want to do a stupid close out.
I don't want to do any of it.